Hi everyone, just a quick one from me tonight. I was just having a look at the channel and I don't know, flick back to the homepage of YouTube or something and saw a video on Vice that was posted about a year ago about Elon Musk and scientists that he's either employed or was working with. To sort of ascertain the science and math behind the simulation theory. And I noticed that it was still being called a theory a year ago. These files on this channel and the book and everything has been going for 5 years, 6 years. And I think it was even before that Elon first spoke on, the fact that we could be living in a simulation and that he was trying to fund research. Now, this was 6 years ago. It may have even been before that he said this. And again, a year ago, there's a Vice video about it, as if that's something that Elon just said. And it kind of baffles me because it's interesting because it's another example of how, the digital world, the internet, just keeps recycling content and creates its own time loop. And it takes a lot to bust out of that and actually have the revelation and find the actual answers. I don't know whether Elon Musk is still trying to work that out. But without wanting to sound like I'm putting my hand up for anything, to be honest with you, it actually irritates me a little bit because it's usually the well-known people that get heard and the famous people that get noticed for whatever discoveries they make, whereas the average person like yourself, myself, and so many others on YouTube that stumble across incredible things and painstakingly make the effort to prove it by running the same experiment over and over and over again and coming up with the same result. We run the risk of our work being hijacked or absconded with and other people taking credit for it at some point down the road. It's such a catch-22 because I'm a private person and don't really want to be famous for the work that I've done. And if it were to ever get more traction, that's something that I would seriously run the risk of having to face, and very uncomfortably so. So on the one hand, it'd kind of be cool if some well-known person went out there and sort of broke the news. But I'd kind of feel pissed off about it if I was, living in poverty at the time and they're making all the money. It's one of those it's one of those things. The other thing that can happen is they can only get it half right, and then because they haven't thoroughly completed the full investigation of it, the whole thing gets written off as being debunked, and it's discredited in its entirety as an overall idea, and the real work never gets looked at again and never sees the light of day. So if you do come to this channel and you're patient enough to sit through what aren't really videos, they're research files and more like an audio of me talking for about a year now, just to summarize everything. If you're patient enough to sit through some of these and you happen to hear this one, I'm hoping that at some point the work on this channel and the books that I've released and will get a little more traction than they are. I'm not asking for anything much, but just a little bit of a wider audience. It's a very controversial subject, even though it tends to fall in the category of science and maths and kind of geeky nerdy stuff. It's also quite controversial because there's a bit of a knowledge contest online, as you know, and everyone wants to be the first to know something, and everyone wants to know more than somebody else, and it's really sort of beside the point. But to have a little bit of a leak would be great. If only to stop the personality cult from getting it wrong. And I'm not saying that with any disrespect to Elon Musk at all. It's just obviously, you know, he's one of the wealthiest men in the world, and I'm very surprised that all that wealth hasn't turned up a result, and yet for someone who doesn't really have any, the answers have been clear for the last 6 years. So maybe it could also be a lesson in general for people to keep in mind that sometimes discoveries like this aren't necessarily the answers to which aren't necessarily found where you would think. They're not necessarily found in a laboratory. They're not necessarily found in a billionaire's wallet. And they're not even found in circles where who you know is important. Sometimes they're just, the answers are found from asking the right questions. And there's no amount of money in the world that can help you ask the right questions. I was fortunate enough to have 10 years of training in metaphysics. Cubicle Wayfield thought the higher way of thinking that enabled me to piece it together, that enabled me to recognize the patterns of the algorithms being used, that enabled me to trace the data to different sources. And it is only with a different understanding of time that the whole question can be answered anyway. I highly doubt that Time Lords or anybody locked into time in their mind and their thinking would be able to visualize or understand the concept of everything happening at once. And at the very least on a vertical plane, not horizontal, as time is often put to us. There is a second book, a sequel to Simulation, coming out. It's simply the same title, Simulation, the Transcripts, but Volume 2. And it will be a rewrite of all the podcasts since April last year. So there's a wealth of information in that, and it's going to be looking at some of the issues that we face in a technological world and in the digital realm, and where we're headed and what's going to happen if we don't stop. It is a little heavy in parts, but it's not a light subject. I mean, we tend to throw around simulation theory as if it's firstly not a fact and as if it's just another topic of discussion that we could dabble in for a little while and sort of go, oh, wow, maybe we are. But there's something intrinsically wrong with that approach, in my opinion. We're in a simulation and it's absolutely abhorrent. It's absolutely abhorrent to know that every beat of our heart, every word that we speak, every person that we meet is all automated. This is not a free society at all. In this physical realm, we are slaves to a system more than ever, and this is not something that you just throw money at to try and figure out how and why that's the case. It takes a deep understanding and appreciation for the value of life to have what it really takes to get to the bottom of it and uncover the code. I worked on it relentlessly for 5 years, 15 hours a day. And at the end of that period of time, I was completely exhausted. I got to a point where I couldn't look at a computer screen. I felt sick. I was so traumatized by what I discovered that I had to stay away from it quite deliberately for about 6 to 9 months. I couldn't even go anywhere near it. During that time, I did make the effort to put out the book at the very least, just to capture the podcasts that I'd released, summarizing it all, and that was an interesting project. And I hope that many people read the book. It is just a summary, and the finer detail, the science and the math behind it is contained within the 500 research files that are also on this channel. You have to go back a bit. I think the front-facing page is mostly showing the podcasts, but if you go to uploads, all the research files are there. They have no audio. They were never intended to be or do anything more than present the data. So yeah, it's if you're approaching this subject correctly, it's cause for pause. It's cause for caution. It's a very somber and sad situation that we are in. And a lot of people don't really want to go there, you know. They're happy at thinking about the simulation as a theory, and it's just an idea to toy around with, and Elon can throw some money at it and see what they come up with. I don't think it's being taken as seriously as it should. It's very easy for people to dabble, you know. Very easy, and I don't see where he's come up with a result. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys and make sure that I've said it in the event that something gets traction at some point and ends up in somebody else's hands, and on the one hand it'd kind of be good because then we'd be halfway there to freeing ourselves from it, You, maybe I know I don't sound very optimistic, but when you understand the cause of the simulation that we're in and how deeply embedded it is in our modern society and this poor excuse for a reality, it becomes even harder to imagine how we could possibly destructure it, break it down. There are a lot of people with their time and money invested into making its external mechanisms work and keep profiting. Very big money, very, very big money, and those companies and those people are not going to go away quietly. United States Department of Defense, I mean, need we say more? Is you can't ask them very nicely to turn it off. The whole world will go into complete chaos. So I'm not really sure what the answer is, except natural disasters and moving out of cities. It's when you do really understand it, I find there are times when I feel completely trapped because there's no escaping it until we die. And the stories that I've heard of religious figures transcending the physical world, Tibetan monks who meditate so deeply that at the point of death they simply disappear, and all that's left behind is a rainbow of light. That comforts me. That gives me hope. Sometimes I think we'd all be better off if we strove for exactly the same thing. And at the same time, there's a lot of beauty in the world, and we have the joy of knowing each other as well. There's all the simple things in life, the laughter, the love, the achievements, the warmth, the families, our talents and our creativity. It's just a little too sobering, I think, for an internet culture and a community of cyber captains, cyber knowledge captains, who want to be the first to know everything and in there talking about the latest thing. It's sort of at the point where the simulation and the answers for it might not even be able to be addressed properly online, because in more recent years the internet seems to have become, or a general perception of the internet is that everything on it's take it with a grain of salt, and it automatically discredits to a large degree really important stuff. Not all the time, but it happens. And I think for myself, the information that I really that really sinks in for me is when I read it in a book, an actual book, not a Kindle, an actual paperback, and it's in those quiet spaces that the real work is done to take in information. I think online we are hijacked into our mental faculties instantly, and it becomes a very intellectual process, Whereas when you're reading a book, a lot more of you absorbs the information in a quieter, deeper, and more lasting way. And I think that the seriousness of the subject is not, it's not even really in line with my personality. I don't enjoy being serious about things. I rather just have a good time and try and be happy. But the seriousness of it is something that's probably not suited to the internet anymore. I I think there's so much sensationalism and so much news media, excuse me, and an overall saturation of drama. That's something that requires a quieter and more considered approach has just to this point sort of become a sideline subject that people bounce in and out of every now and then. Oh, the simulation theory. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're probably living in a video game or something. That's what I struggle to find how that's entertaining, an entertaining idea. I really do. I've been through some extremely difficult experiences as a result of coming to understand what I have as a result of the research. And one of them is watching people talk to me and recognizing where their words aren't their own because they sound like parts of a movie script that's streaming online at that moment. It's very confronting. You might not understand what I've just said, but the penny will drop in a second. It's very confronting. It's very alienating. It's very isolating. And even more so when it's people you know and love. To understand how deep the mind control is, how deep the program runs, and how long it's been around for. Now, in Australia, excuse me, by the way, sorry, it's September 11 as I record this. Tomorrow it will be September 12, but in the US it will be September 11 in the morning. And I anticipate that there will be a cyber attack of some kind. We are in the year 2022. That's a 2022. So on the 20, we have a resource-enabled presentation, which basically, in the simulation, it takes the inner torque of the data that's in the system, recycles it, and enables the presentation of that data as events, as world events. So it's really anyone's guess what might happen. The reason I suspect something will is because we're not just on a 20, we're on a 2022. Half of 22 is 11. That brings us to DC1, domain control 1, which is Facebook. Yes, really. Yes, really. And this is the other interesting thing. The truth of the simulation is so ridiculous that most people would find it very hard to believe, but it's true. It sort of discredits itself because of how ridiculous it is. Facebook has 3 billion people on it, probably more than that by now, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we're in a 2022 enable presentation on the 22, which is 11. And that's Facebook. And the 22 is also our G for global, in global positioning system, global peering exchange. And we get to 22 because it is the sum of 067135, which is where these files started. 135, May 13. My birth date, sadly, having a 67 in it, because I'm a Leo. And it is the Lion's Gate, that is the sun that is at war, that man is at war with, and that this technology is at war with the sun. Our heart is the sun, and that's what they rip out. That's what this system is designed to do, to rip out the heart. If you've ever had your heart broken, crank that up to about by 1,000 times, and then you'll get an idea of what it is to have your heart ripped out by this monstrosity of artificial intelligence that runs and controls everything that we do, think, and say. Right down to the people we meet. It's all pre-programmed now. It's a little harder to understand it in reverse time because we will look at world history and think quite reasonably, well, this technology didn't exist 2,000 years ago, so how do you explain that? Well, I don't know. How do you think? We covered it in the first book. It's all happening at once. So you're going to get bleed-throughs of data. And there's a lot of movies online. There's also a lot of Jesus movies online. So it's very interesting. It's extremely interesting to see this time loop that we live in, is exactly what it is, to realise that we are inside a black hole in our own consciousness, in our own perception. We look up to the sky at night, we see stars, which are sparkling IP addresses, and all we see is darkness. It's what it's like on the inside of a black hole, which is the internet. It's not difficult, and it doesn't take Elon Musk or billions of dollars to figure it out. The mechanics of it, sure, it's a little bit tricky. You've got to understand how it affects the senses and it affects our perception of reality, and that simulations are perception-based. But the impact that they have is to convince the mind of something that isn't true, and therefore physically you become subservient to what your mind believes, and the system we're in promotes sickness, death, and disaster as the go-to for the juicy story. It's all nonsense. It's nothing to do with the existence of human life or what our real destiny is or our potential or anything of that nature. This mass media infected matrix, and the simulation is just keeps on humming along to the same background code, and everything online just is recycled in different combinations. So as for what happens tomorrow, who can say? I know that cyber attacks usually happen on 135, which is where we get our 22 from, on the 6-7 as well. And G is global. Now, the original 911 was in New York in 2001. Yeah, because on the 20, we have a resource enabled presentation, and on the 01, we have domain control 1, data center 1, which is also Facebook as it is now. And in Sage, the semi-automatic ground environment, it was New York, the New York Center, that was data center 1. So it's all the background coding exposes itself, and everything that happens, you can trace it back to the background coding. So it didn't cost me anything more than an internet connection to find it, and a lot of training and a lot of time and a lot of patience and asking the right questions and somehow getting it right and following my intuition to get it right. I actually haven't really sat and thought long and hard about what it is that I might have achieved. I don't feel comfortable with ridiculous, overt displays of celebrity and celebration of something like this. It's a shocking disgrace. I would rather not have to talk about it. I prefer that it didn't exist. It's really quite strange. Other things that I discovered throughout the files was to do with the pyramids of Egypt, actually. And off the top of my head, that the main pyramid, Khufu, is exactly the same engineering as the background coding of the simulation that we're in. So, and it's all military based, Department of Defense, IBM, original processors and mainframes and coding that has wound its way online and been digitalized in such an invasive way that our senses are completely distorted now, and everything that we see around us is basically Google Maps. I mean, these people aren't going to walk away quietly. And the irony is that Elon Musk, wanting to find out what the simulation is, he's going to find out very quickly that he'll have to take out the internet if he wants to turn it off. It will literally have to not exist. And yet with every day that passes, we become more and more subjected and subjugated to this insane approach to life where everything's online. Oh, you go to the website. Oh, you want to get a job here? Go to the website. You want to pay a bill? Do it online banking. Download the app. Can't even sign a contract anymore and have a hard copy of it. It's all done online, Just sign for it digitally. It's nuts. It's actually sick. It's a demented aberration of what it is to be a human being. It is completely godless. It's not desirable in the slightest. And it's sad because there are a lot of good people working in tech. There's a lot of good people working in the IT sector, information technology. They don't realise what they're doing is probably the worst job you could ever want to do, basically working for Satan, and it's not funny. It's not funny. The whole system thrives on sacrifice, blood sacrifice of children, which happens every day. If this was turned off, we could stand a chance to get back in line with our spiritual evolution and be that monk that can transcend this world, or be that Jesus that doesn't end up on a cross, that we could discover our natural healing abilities, that our lives could be imbued with a divine light, that illness and suffering and pain would not be anything we'd have to experience anymore. That we'd be able to enjoy some level of harmony and unity in this world that doesn't have to be forced on us through globalism, which is the artificial version. The internet is artificial light. It's not a natural formation. And it's in the airwaves all the time. So we've got a long way to go before the majority understand the impact of radio waves and what they're being used for on the human being, how it impacts us all the time and every day. Our governments have no idea. They just go along with it. And now they're all too busy. They're all being psyoped by Facebook. All they care about is updating their social media status. I mean, seriously, snap back. Take a look at what's really happening. If Elon Musk wants to throw billions of dollars at finding out what the simulation theory is, well, it's been over 6 years and he hasn't come up with anything. You know, maybe he got busy buying social media networks like Twitter just to try and give people some free speech to make more noise online. Apparently, the only important thing in life is the American political system. The rest of us don't really matter. And it's the USA show. I mean, you know, I guess you could say we could be grateful for the fact that we have a means of connecting with each other anywhere in the world, but let's look at the facts. I mean, unless you and I are Skyping or talking on the phone, or I run it live, I can't see you. I can't see you, the listener. I don't know where you are. It's a communication device. It's information technology. It's one method of communicating. It's a telephone that with a screen, you know. And this is what we've pinned our hopes on. You know, apparently it wasn't good enough to pin our hopes on the natural world or the spiritual. We had to pin them on artificial devices that just so happen to make a lot of money for a lot of people. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? And it really discredits itself before you even think too much about it. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. I won't go on for too long tonight. 40 minutes is enough. As I said at the start, if you happen to get through all the way through this one and you feel like sharing it or letting your friends know about this channel and the books, by all means, please do. Not too much attention. Just whatever happens, if at some point in the future someone says, oh, they discovered the simulation, just don't forget about this channel. That's all I'm saying. Don't forget that you were here first. And I will wait to have my findings verified by people who don't understand it. Thanks very much. I'll catch you next time.